On the surface, it looked like nothing more than a child's curious recording. A 10-year-old boy wandering his home with a shaky camera, exploring dusty corners and forgotten rooms. But what that lens unknowingly captured was far more than clutter or chaos. It was a harrowing window into what would soon be dubbed the Shippy Death House. A nightmare unfolding in plain sight, cloaked behind closed doors and muffled silence. The first real alarm came not from neighbors or police, but from distant relatives who hadn't heard from Alyssa Shippy, 20, since November 2024. Her cousin, worried by months of silence, had tried calling, texting. Nothing. Then came a final haunting clue. A strange, unsettling video posted on Logan Shippy's tiny YouTube channel. It was raw, unfiltered, and utterly tragic. On a warm afternoon in May 2025, officers arrived at a small, worn-down home on West Roanoke Street in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. What they found behind that closed front door would shake even seasoned investigators. The scene wasn't just unsettling, it was traumatizing. It would leave some responders needing years of therapy to recover. But to understand how it all led to this, we need to step back to where the unraveling began, with a seemingly ordinary family. What could possibly tear apart a household that once looked so normal from the outside? Welcome to Crime Uncovered, where every case has a story, and the truth is often stranger and darker than fiction. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that button to stay updated on the latest true crime cases we uncover. And to our returning subscribers, thank you for your continued support. Don't forget to like this video so it reaches more people who care about the truth behind the headlines. In 2021, Rodney and Lisa Shippy bought the modest single-story house on West Roanoke Street. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs, surrounded by a small garden, shaded by overgrown trees, and filled with the noise of daily life. Lisa worked in the public school system. Rodney held down a regular job. They weren't wealthy, but they were building something stable, or so it seemed. Their children were the heart of the household. Alyssa, the older of the two, was entering adulthood. She loved animals, cartoons, and had dreams of working in veterinary care. Her younger brother, Logan, was 10 years old and autistic. He didn't speak much, but he communicated through gestures, soundboards, and a love for garage doors that became his unique obsession. Behind it all, however, the family was stretched thin. Raising a nonverbal child is emotionally and physically taxing. Lisa had long struggled with depression, according to close friends. The toll of daily routines, meltdowns, communication challenges, and emotional burnout weighed heavily on her shoulders. Alyssa helped when she could, but she was young and trying to carve her own path. Rodney worked long hours and often left Lisa to manage alone. Then came the breaking point. What happened in the summer of 2022 would send shockwaves through the Shippy family, and it was only the beginning. In August 2022, a devastating silence fell over the Shippy household. Lisa Shippy, the mother who had quietly shouldered the weight of her family's struggles, died by suicide inside the home she once fought so hard to keep together. For years, Lisa had battled depression, often invisible to outsiders but very real behind closed doors. She had done everything she could for her son, Logan, whose special needs demanded constant attention and compassion. She tried to be the anchor for her daughter, Alyssa, who was approaching adulthood with dreams and insecurities of her own. But somewhere along the way, Lisa's own strength ran out. Her death sent an invisible shockwave through the house. The very room where Logan once played with his favorite toys became a place of loss. The bedroom where Alyssa had once hung string lights and posters now held a heavier kind of darkness. Even the garden, once modestly kept, began to look abandoned, as though it too had stopped trying. Rodney, now a widower, did not fall apart in front of others. He kept showing up to work, kept up appearances just enough to avoid concern. He gave short replies to neighbors, nodding without emotion. But behind the walls of that house, something inside him began to break. Quietly, slowly, and completely. His presence became ghost-like, his expressions unreadable, as if he were drifting through life without purpose. Alyssa, once bubbly and connected, retreated into herself. She dropped her online college courses, explaining to a few friends that it was just a temporary break. But the break never ended. Her texts became less frequent. Her social media posts dwindled to nothing. No more cartoons. No animal rescue posts. Just silence. Logan, who used to be seen outside watching garage doors open and close with wonder in his eyes, also seemed to disappear. The neighborhood noticed. The boy who once brought curious joy to passers-by was no longer standing on the sidewalk. He was no longer smiling as the mechanical arms of a garage door lifted into the air. It was like the light inside the house had gone out and taken the people with it. As weeks turned into months, the Shippy home transformed from a grieving household to a shell of what it once was. The sounds of daily life, meals cooking, doors opening, laughter, footsteps, were replaced by a haunting stillness. But even then, no one outside the family truly knew just how deeply that first loss had begun to unravel everything. Just 5 months later, another death would strike. And this time, the ripple would be even wider. Just when it seemed the Shippy family had reached their limit, another harrowing tragedy struck. This time in January 2023, less than 5 months after Lisa's death. But it didn't happen at their home. This time, it was in South Broken Arrow, at the residence of Lisa's parents, Diane and Kenny Carpenter. A neighbor had called the police after hearing disturbing noises. When officers arrived, they found a gruesome scene. Diane Carpenter had been bludgeoned to death in her own kitchen. Her body bore the marks of a brutal, uncontrolled rage. Her husband, Kenny, had locked himself inside, refusing to speak to law enforcement or respond to their pleas. For 4 tense hours, police negotiators tried to de-escalate the situation. But the only reply came in the form of a single, echoing gunshot. Kenny had turned the weapon on himself, ending his life in the same house where he had just taken his wife's. The news rippled through the Shippy family like a second tidal wave of grief. In less than half a year, Alyssa and Logan had lost their mother, grandmother, and grandfather. Rodney, already barely holding on, was forced to carry another unimaginable loss. But this time, his grief turned completely inward. There were no public condolences from Rodney. No social media post, no memorial, not even a whispered mention. He shut down entirely, emotionally and socially. The man who had once posted a video from a concert years ago no longer had any desire to share or explain. His silence was louder than any words could have been. Alyssa, already withdrawing from the world after her mother's passing, posted one heartbreaking message on Facebook. "I miss you, Grandma." It was the only sign she gave that she was still emotionally present. And then she vanished from the digital world once again. Back at the Shippy home on West Roanoke, signs of life slowly faded. The lights were rarely turned on. Curtains remained drawn at all hours. Windows were sealed tight. There were no visitors, no deliveries, no interaction with the community. The once lived-in home now appeared to be in hibernation, as though trying to protect itself from the outside world, or hide from it. Inside those walls, grief had stopped being a feeling. It had become a condition, constant, the kind of sorrow that lingers like fog, thick, cold, and suffocating. But even as the family slipped deeper into isolation, one quiet observer kept the record going. Logan, the silent boy with a camera, would become the family's final storyteller, without even realizing it. Logan Shippy wasn't like other kids. Diagnosed with autism and nonverbal, he found fascination in the simplest things, particularly garage doors. To him, watching those heavy panels rise and fall was soothing, predictable. While other children played sports or games, Logan would quietly stand near driveways, mesmerized by the mechanical rhythm. Over time, the neighbors grew to know and love him for it. Some even installed smart garage openers, allowing Logan to control the doors himself using an app on his phone. Each press of the button brought a smile to his face, a rare moment of calm in a world that rarely felt calm to him. But after Lisa's death, even that small joy began to fade. Logan's YouTube channel, once populated with short, joyful videos of garage doors and quiet outdoor adventures, became sparse. The uploads slowed. The light in his eyes, once so visible in the background of those clips, began to dim. Then, in early 2025, a new kind of video appeared on his channel. It wasn't about garage doors. It was a shaky, unfiltered tour of the inside of the Shippy home. Filmed from Logan's point of view, the footage captured a far more disturbing reality, one that viewers would later realize was a silent cry for help. The rooms were cluttered with garbage, old furniture in pieces, and dirty dishes stacked in corners. Animals, possibly strays, roamed freely through the filth. The floors were cracked, walls stained, blankets of dust clung to unused surfaces. Some areas looked like they hadn't been cleaned or lived in for months. In one heartbreaking moment, the camera caught a glimpse of Rodney, slouched at the kitchen table, staring at an iPad. He didn't flinch when Logan entered the room. He didn't speak. His body language was that of a man completely disconnected from the world around him. Then came Logan's voice, faint but unmistakable. "Dad." No reply. He had found the words, but no one was listening. It was the kind of moment that would shatter anyone watching, especially those who had once seen Logan's quiet joy in the neighborhood. And yet, there was something more disturbing than the silence. The house wasn't just dirty. It was deteriorating, falling into ruin, as if the people living inside had stopped caring whether it stood or collapsed. And one more thing stood out. Someone was missing. Alyssa, Rodney's daughter, Logan's sister, was nowhere in the frame. Not in the background. Not in a passing glance. Not even mentioned. Where was Alyssa Shippy? And why had no one seen or heard from her since the autumn of the previous year? By the time spring of 2025 arrived, Alyssa Shippy had not been seen by anyone, online or in person, for nearly 5 months. Her once frequent texts to her cousin Patty Williams had stopped. Her Facebook account, last updated in August 2023, sat dormant. It was as if she had simply vanished. When people asked Rodney where Alyssa was, he gave different answers each time. To one person, she had moved in with friends. To another, she was doing fine. Strangely, Rodney even told a neighbor she was being treated for cancer. That neighbor, moved by sympathy, gave him money for her care. But there were no hospital records, no social media activity, and Alyssa appeared in none of Logan's videos, even the ones filmed throughout the house. By March 2025, Patty had grown suspicious. She asked friends nearby to check on the house. No one could reach Alyssa. Then someone sent her Logan's latest video, the one that showed trash-strewn floors, broken furniture, and rotting conditions. The images were alarming. Not only was Alyssa missing, but the home itself looked unlivable. Something was terribly wrong. But no one outside the house yet knew how deep the darkness ran. It wouldn't be until the police returned with a warrant that the full horror would be uncovered. On May 25, 2025, Logan posted what would become his final YouTube video. It was more of the same, unfiltered, unsettling, and unbearably sad. The camera wandered from room to room, capturing filth, clutter, and chaos. Logan, now 10, narrated quietly, pushing buttons, making sound effects, and occasionally pointing the lens toward his father, Rodney. In one moment, he tried to speak to Rodney. "Dad." But no response. Silence. Rodney sat at the kitchen table, fixated on an iPad, completely detached. Logan's voice, something his late mother had worked so hard to encourage, was finally emerging. But now no one was listening. 3 days later, May 28, 2025, police returned to the Shippy residence. With a search warrant in hand, they entered the home. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The horror waiting in the shadows of that house was far worse than anyone had imagined. The house reeked of decay. There was no running water. Mold crept up the walls. Rotting food clung to sticky floors. Trash bags, broken furniture, and animal feces filled every corner. It was the kind of scene that made seasoned officers gag. But the worst was yet to come. First, they found Rodney Shippy, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Next to him was Logan, also deceased. The family's dog lay lifeless nearby. That alone would have been tragedy enough. But something didn't add up. There were signs that someone else had been in the home recently. Clothes, belongings, subtle movements in the mess. Police returned later that night with better lights and tools to continue the search. Then they found her. Behind a collapsed stack of furniture and debris in a dark, powerless room, lay the body of a young woman. She was badly decomposed, almost unrecognizable. But her family didn't need a name tag. It was Alyssa. Her presence changed everything, and so did the unanswered question. How long had she been there? The discovery of Alyssa's body turned a tragedy into a full-blown nightmare. Not only had Rodney taken his own life, but it appeared he had kept Alyssa's death a secret, possibly for months. The timeline grew murky. The decomposition, the filth, and the clutter made it difficult to determine exactly when she had died. There were no visible signs of trauma on her body. No suicide note. No parting message. No text or call. Investigators believed she may have died from neglect, untreated illness, or possibly starvation. But without a clear cause of death, everything remained speculative. The medical examiner's office withheld an official report. One thing was clear. Logan had been recording inside the house, living among the dead, unaware that his sister's body was just one room away. Even in the final video, where Rodney is shown calmly using an iPad, he knew. He knew she was there. He had chosen silence over help. But why? What drives a father to hide the death of his daughter while pretending life is still going on? In the aftermath of the discovery, Rodney's deception became more disturbing. His story about Alyssa having cancer had been false. He had accepted money from neighbors under this lie. Meanwhile, Alyssa's body was deteriorating in a back room. To investigators, it appeared Rodney had entered a spiral of denial, mental instability, and possibly psychosis. Financial stress likely added pressure. U.S. Bank had served him a foreclosure notice in January 2025, revealing he owed $135,000. He had until June to respond. He never did. The mailbox overflowed. Unopened packages stacked on the porch. Friends who once checked in were turned away. The home became a tomb, both physically and emotionally. No one outside the house knew how far things had fallen, until it was too late. And the one person who tried to sound the alarm? She was miles away, watching Logan's video on her phone. Patty Williams, Alyssa's cousin, had grown more alarmed with each passing month. But even she hadn't anticipated the scale of what was happening. When she saw Logan's YouTube video, it struck her like lightning. The silence, the loneliness. She filed the missing person report that finally pushed law enforcement to act. It wasn't easy. Rodney had misled everyone, including her. He just started to estrange himself from everybody, she later told reporters. When I didn't hear from him, I didn't think much of it. He'd done that before. Patty recalled Logan's love for garage doors, how neighbors would indulge his fascination. He was the neighborhood's gentle spirit. Alyssa, she said, was a bright person with a beautiful life ahead of her. Now both were gone. But even with the family gone, one chilling truth remained. Their story could have ended differently if someone had stepped in sooner. As of today, the official cause of Alyssa Shippy's death has not been released. The advanced decomposition limited forensic analysis. No clear injuries, no suicide, no violent signs. Just a young woman lost in time, buried under secrecy and silence. Had Rodney snapped under the weight of grief, financial ruin, and isolation? Had he simply given up? Or had something even darker taken root in his mind? Investigators say there were no signs of struggle, no final messages, just a father, a son, and a daughter, dead in the same home where Lisa had died less than 3 years before. A home that had slowly become a prison, a trap, a grave. Logan's videos, the very ones meant to capture joy, became the accidental documentation of a quiet, unfolding horror. In the end, the saddest part may be that the world didn't hear Logan's silent cry for help until it was far too late. Thank you for watching. Every victim deserves their story told. If you found this story shocking and heartbreaking, subscribe to Crime Uncovered and help keep their memory alive. What do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep questioning everything.